What's up, everybody? Welcome to Apolo-neering. Today we have an awesome special guest. I'm super excited for this one. We're going to be discussing Scientology today and learning a little bit more about what they teach. And we're going to be talking to someone who came out of Scientology and who's been just a cool impact on the world and really shown what they teach in that church. So this is Apolo-neering, and today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Usually I go in and ask people about their testimony and how Jesus saved them. Chris is just going to give us his story today and teach us about Scientology. So I'm really excited for it. I think the information that he has is very valuable and very true. And from the research that I've done on him and listened to him, it seems like he's very legit. So I'm excited to see this and hear about what he has. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Chris and then we'll get going. So Chris Shelton is a former Scientologist and Sea Org member and is now a writer, consultant, podcaster, YouTuber, and advocate for critical thinking. He has written a critical analysis of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard called Scientology A to Xenu. And it's available at Amazon in printed form, ebook, and all other platforms that you can imagine. As part of his road to recovery, Chris discovered skepticism and the whole subject of critical thinking. Once he started learning about logic and reason, he made it his mission in life to spread this new gospel so as to help others in their lives. So, Chris, how are you, man? How's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's such an honor for you to be on here. It's pretty cool. I'm just getting started. I've seen the stuff that you've done, and it seems like you're a few years ahead of me, I guess I should say. So,
no worries. It's, we all started at zero and move forward. That's how it goes on YouTube.
That's right, man. And so
right.
we're thankful here to have you on and to hear about what you have. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? Start from the beginning, I guess, or wherever you see fit, and I'll just ask questions as we go along here.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so I grew up a Scientologist. My parents got involved when I was very young, like about 4 years old, and so I'm called a second generation or second gen Scientologist, right? That's how we sort of refer to it. Which sort of encompasses, third, fourth, fifth gen, and that's about as far back as it goes because the whole thing started in 1950. So it's really only 78, almost 80 years old.
Right.
And of course, most of the people who got involved back in the day are not, they're dead now. So a lot of people who are Scientologists these days are second gen, third gen members.
Okay.
And I was for a very long time. I was involved with it for 27 years formally. That was actually after it was longer altogether because I'm 49 years old, but I formally started taking classes and becoming, involved with it when I was 15 years old. Up until then, I had been around the lingo. Like anybody growing up in any religion, I learned the concepts. I learned the terminology, a lot of the terminology, but from a child's perspective.
Yeah.
So I wasn't serious about it. I thought it was a little odd. I didn't really know much about it. I participated a little bit as a kid, and I had certain aspects of the teachings applied to me in certain ways. But in most ways, I had a fairly, I don't want to say a fairly normal childhood because it was unusual. My parents were involved in a destructive cult. So I went to public school. I had other friends who weren't Scientologists, that kind of thing. But most of my family's friends were Scientologists. Most of the people we associated with were Scientologists. And most of the flavor of my upbringing was Scientology.
Okay.
So it was very easy to get me involved when I was 15 years old. I was in high school. I was shy. I was introverted. I was nerdy. My nose was in a book most of the time. I was that kind of geeky kind of guy. And this is back in the 80s when it wasn't cool to be a nerd or a geek, right? Like it is now.
Yeah, right.
So, so I was picked on. I was bullied a lot. And Scientology offered me a road out because it was giving me, it was telling me that it was going to give me the ability to communicate with anybody, to handle situations with communication alone, with this communications class they were gonna have me do, as well as a study class, which was going to help me with my studies. I was going to be able to talk to girls. I wasn't going to be so shy anymore. I was going to get dates. Like, these were the kind of things that for a 15-year-old Chris Shelton, you know, these were very important problems in life to deal with, right?
The most
And
important.
oh my God, man, I'm telling you, right? So, and I, you know, I did the classes, and it didn't really help me with those things, but the classes really didn't make that much of a change when I was trying, you know, with giving me the tools that they gave me to use.
Yeah.
But I thought they did.
Wow.
And that's the important part, right? Because if you think you're better at something than you really are, I mean, unfortunately, a very common problem for most of us in some area or another, you start acting foolish. And I, in high school, acted more foolish than usual, which is a little bit hard to say because everybody acts pretty stupid in high school. But I went kind of out of my way to make a fool out of myself by, you know, good communication skills that I'm now going to use to, you know, put myself out there and put my best foot forward and get a date and finally, you know, get laid and this kind of stuff. None of that ever happened, right? It was
right.
Now, here's the stupid part, right? And this is the part where the cultist stuff starts, is you'd think, seeing no results from these classes, that I would have gone, well, that wasn't really such a good thing, right? But I was so pro-bias towards Scientology. I had been raised with it. My parents were so active with it that I thought, and the teachings of Scientology are such that if I wasn't getting the positive results from it, it was my fault. I was doing something wrong.
Right.
Right? It's not that, you know, it's not that physics is wrong. It's that you're not executing the formulas properly, and so you're not getting the right result. Say, you know, or math or whatever, 2 + 2 = 4, right? Well, with Scientology, it's presented the same way. It's not anything like physics or math or science. It's not like a hard science, but it pretends that it is.
Yeah.
So I had the idea that, okay, well, I didn't get all the dates, and I didn't get laid, and I didn't get this, and I didn't get that, but look at all these positive things that did happen to me. And of course, those are all because of Scientology. Really, that not a whole lot of positive things happened to me. I'm just, you know, you're just kind of making stuff up. And so when I was 17 years old, I finished high school. I was going to go on to college, and the local church recruited me to work there instead. They said, college, smallage, you don't need any of that crap. You know, college is for the birds, right? Hubbard, you know, failed out of college. I didn't know at the time that he failed out of college. This isn't information that's given to Scientologists.
No, it's not.
No. In fact, Scientologists are told that L. Ron Hubbard was a successful graduate of the first class ever given back in the 1900s.
Yep.
In atomic and molecular phenomena. In other words, he was like a nuclear physicist, right?
Yep.
Complete crap. Okay, total nonsense. And so he, in his lectures and his talks, derided college. He said college is, you know, university is for the birds. I've been there. I've done that. It's all a bunch of crap. And we all went, oh, okay, well, Rod knows what he's talking about, and we don't, and we're going to listen to him because he's the authority. And so I skipped out of college after 3 weeks, and I started working for Scientology. And that's something that I did for the next 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a slow learner. So it took me a while to figure out that what I had become involved in was actually a very, very, very bad thing. And it really did take me a very long time to figure that out, because the language of Scientology and the practice of it, what we were involved in, was all about saving the world.
Right.
It's really important that people understand that, especially for people who are working for Scientology, whether they're staff members at a local city level church like in Detroit or, you know, Twin Cities or here in Denver. You have these city level churches. the staff who work for those places are volunteers. They're not making any real money. Maybe they're making a couple hundred a week, maybe.
Yeah.
Mostly less than $100 a week.
Yeah.
So they have to have other jobs, that sort of thing. I did. For 8 years, I worked at the Church of Scientology of Santa Barbara. My best pay week ever, I think, was about $200 once. Most of the time I was making $10-20 a week. I mean, it was just nothing, right?
Yeah.
The exchange you're supposed to get as a staff member for a Scientology organization is they give you Scientology services for free. And over the 8 years that I worked there, I did partake in a lot of Scientology services. So I did a lot of classes, and I got the counseling, or what's called auditing.
Right.
And
those are expensive, aren't they?
Oh God, yes. Normally this stuff is hundreds of dollars per hour. And it's sold in chunks of 12.5-hour blocks. They're called an intensive. You buy an intensive of auditing. It's 12.5 hours. You're going to get 12.5 hours of it, and then it's going to be done, and then you're going to have to pay for some more. And so there's a sliding scale. You can make a religious donation, right? Although you're obviously buying the service. They call it a religious donation because they're a church. Right.
Well, they're 501c3, right?
Exactly, right? Nonprofit, church status. So I was saving thousands of dollars by not having to purchase that auditing. My exchange was my time. And I worked 40 to 60 hours a week, every week for 8 years at the Church of Scientology, Santa Barbara. It was my whole life. It was what I did. I had other jobs that I did, full-time, part-time, whatever I could get in order to make the rent, keep food in my mouth. But my primary mission in life was being a Scientologist and working for the church. So after 8 years of that, I sort of looked around and went, again, here was a moment where I could have went, something's not quite right about all this. I mean, I'm moving up the bridge is what they call it, the series of services that you receive in Scientology. They are standardized services. Everybody does this service, and then they do the next service, and then they do the next service, and it's a series of steps you do, which are gradually increasing in price, but are also gradually increasing kind of in terms of time commitment and stuff too. By the time you're at the highest levels, it takes you years to get through a single step.
Right.
In a rough way. I mean, there's that comes and goes. Some of the higher level services are very short also. But I'm trying to talk generally in a very broad sense because I don't expect your audience is going to be as in tune as mine is with all the minutia of Scientology. It's a fantastically large subject. There are over 20-25 books. There are thousands of lectures from L. Ron Hubbard that constitute the body of Scientology. Technology is what they call it. And it presents itself as a very scientific kind of thing. So it's not at all, but it presents itself that way. So after 8 years, I was like, well, I'm working my butt off. I'm 25 years old now. I'm not really in a better, I'm kind of feeling better. I like Scientology. I kind of like what it's done for me. It's given me all these moments of euphoria and happiness and these auditing sessions that I've gotten. But other than those few and far between moments of euphoria and happiness, my life was really quite a bit of a struggle. And I wasn't really particularly happy. I had no girlfriend. I didn't have any of that, right? And so I said, well, maybe I need to go all in. So I doubled down on my commitment and I joined what's called the Sea Organization. That's SEA organization. It's a paramilitary naval outfit. Hubbard was in the Navy in World War II. And he created his own. And he created his own little navy. And he called it the Sea Organization. And he started this in 1967. Well, by the time I joined in 1995, there were approximately 4,000 or 5,000 Sea Org members worldwide. I moved to Los Angeles from Santa Barbara, and I started working in Sea Org management. The Sea organization is the core group. You could call them, a rough analogy, it doesn't totally work, but a rough way to describe it is the clergy of Scientology.
Okay.
The core, like the people who really keep it together, like the Vatican.
Yeah.
Of Catholicism, right?
Okay.
That's the Sea Org. They are an international organization. There are Sea Org bases well, there's one in the United Kingdom, in Copenhagen, in I think Sydney, Australia,
Yeah.
Los Angeles, California, and Clearwater, Florida. So you have these major Sea Org bases.
Right.
And I worked at the one in Los Angeles. And Scientology is a very structured, organized group. This is not a loosey-goosey operation. They're very, very structured. And at the top levels, you have the Sea organization, which models itself with ranks and ratings and uniforms. And yes, sir, no, sir, how high, sir, should I jump, sir?
Yes.
So I go into this, and I did their boot camp. They actually have a little boot camp. It's called the Estates Project Force, which is just a group of folks who run around doing heavy physical labor and taking classes and learning how to be a Sea Org member, because it's a step up from just a regular Scientology commitment. When you join the Sea organization, it's 24/7. You are in the Scientology military now, and it's a life commitment. You sign a contract of voluntary.
A billion years, right?
A billion years, that's right. It's a symbolic commitment, but not really.
Yeah.
They say it's a symbolic commitment, but part of Scientology's beliefs, and I know I'm just going on and on, but I'm trying to sort of give you the outline of my story to start with here.
Sure.
Part of Scientology's belief system is that you have lived before in earlier lives with earlier bodies.
Yep.
And that you've done this many times, predating Earth. I mean, we've been around, according to Scientology, we have been around for a very long time. Trillions of years.
Okay.
So we don't have a memory of that.
Right.
Why? Right?
Yeah.
Because of the accumulated stress and trauma of dying and being born again, and then having to live a whole life of growth and loss and death and and all the things that happen in a person's life. Well, imagine having lived that billions of times.
Yeah.
One, would you even have the capability of remembering it, in a body? And two, would you even want to?
Right.
You've loved and lived and had children and all of those things that have happened. Would you really want to remember all of it?
No.
It's an honest question. It's a bit of a thought experiment, right?
Right.
So in the Scientology framework of belief, you do not remember it because you have been made to forget it.
Okay.
Through a process that occurs to people between lives. They are spiritual entities. They are called thetans in Scientology.
Yep.
You have a body, it dies, you're compelled to go get another body through various circumstances. We don't have to get into all the details. It's a pretty simple concept. And so you're going to therefore live again. In fact, the way Scientology talks about it is you don't die. Right. You, the spiritual entity, never die. You are an immortal spiritual being.
Right.
Your body dies, and your body has about as much importance as a splinter in your thumb. I mean, it's just not a big deal.
Yeah.
There's millions of bodies. You've had millions of bodies. You're going to have tons more. Get off the pretense of your body being important, or your current life being very important. You've had billions of them. After you've had, if you have thousands of toothpicks, does one toothpick really matter that much?
Right.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So that on that theory, on that idea, with that belief in mind, I joined the Sea Org with the commitment that I would work for it for the rest of this lifetime, and in my continuing future lifetimes, because this was the only game in town that I thought, and was convinced at this point, was salvaging everybody.
Okay.
Everybody. right? Our job was to salvage everyone. You, me, your mom, right? Your
Yeah.
cousin Bill, like
Yeah.
all of them. Like
So it was like an evangelistic effort or something, right?
yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
Okay.
That's sort of the overriding purpose. And we all had different jobs to do within the organizational structure that would all contribute.
Okay.
Whether you were the lowest janitor or the highest executive, you had an important job and everybody had something to do. Yeah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, it didn't really work out that way, but that was the theory of it.
Okay.
So I joined the Sea organization. This is 1995 now. I moved down to LA. The Sea organization, because it's, the core of Scientology, they have a lot of different functions. They deliver high-level confidential services to the public. They manage all of Scientology's organizations all over the world. The Church of Scientology of Santa Barbara, or the Church of Scientology of Denver, or the Church of Scientology of Milano are not independent franchise operations. They are managed by Scientology International. They're given orders and directions on what to do every single week, and they are expected to get those orders done. They don't usually get them done, but they're expected to.
Yeah.
So that's how the structure works. It's not a loosey-goosey kind of, let's all be, really nice and all just get along. And it's a very structured, command-driven organization.
Okay.
Okay, so, and I'm now in a position of giving some of those orders. Because now I've gone from a city level church, just a lowly little staff member down in Santa Barbara.
Right.
Now I'm up here at continental management. And my continent, the area I'm in charge of, is the Western United States. For everything from the Mississippi west, including Hawaii. Because there is a Church of Scientology out in Hawaii.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I spend 8 years in management, right? Running, giving directions and orders down to these various churches of Scientology. We call them, by the way, we didn't call them ever. We didn't ever refer to them as churches. We called them orgs.
Okay.
ORGS, orgs, short for organizations. Scientology is, it's a business with religious cloaking.
You're right.
So it's actually just a scam.
Yeah.
But it really is run like and operated as though it were a business. And that's also something I want to make sure that your audience gets, right?
Yeah.
It's a very, very organized activity.
Okay.
They know exactly, what they're trying to do in terms of the belief structure and system, everything I've told you about the beliefs and everything. Scientologists really do believe that stuff.
Yeah.
And they don't think it's a scam. They really believe that L. Ron Hubbard knew what he was talking about. He really was a genius. He really did discover all this stuff. That's what they think.
Yeah.
So they're not thinking that they're scamming people.
Yeah.
It's only at the very, very, very top that they know that.
Yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard was actually a believer. He believed in his own nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I think that L. Ron Hubbard had some spiritual experiences through his drug use and stuff that kind of, maybe he did have revelation of some of this stuff that really, that he thought was experiencing through, because he was an avid drug user, from what I understand, through the court appearances of his son, stating that on record and stuff like that. So in my opinion, I think it could have been some hallucinations of things that appeared to him or something. I don't know.
Well, L. Ron Hubbard certainly had delusions of grandeur.
Yeah.
He was also extremely vindictive. He was not into being criticized or insulted in any way.
Neither is his predecessor.
What's that?
Neither is his predecessor.
Yes, no, that's right. They are, or you mean his successor, David Miscavige?
Successor, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Hubbard specifically he had this vindictive trait that he had. It was very strong. And he wrote that into the policies of the organization. So it's literally in the DNA of Scientology to be a vindictive, vengeful organization. And that's why you see them go after people legally or with what's called fair gaming and this stalking and the harassment and the other things that Scientology gets up to are all there because they're a reflection of L. Ron Hubbard's personality.
Right.
When you look at a destructive cult situation, whether it's, you know, the Jehovah's Witnesses, which is millions of members around the world, or a smaller operation like Scientology, or a really tiny operation like NXIVM, right? Keith Renier's thing that just got, he got busted. You have an organization that is reflective of the personality of its leadership.
Right.
Right, because the followers of in a destructive cult situation, and this is one of the ways you can sort of tell whether you're talking about a destructive cult versus a religion.
Right.
Some people, you know, say there's no difference, but there is, and one of the differences is this this attempt on the part of the membership or the followers to become the leader. There's a personality shift that happens. And it's a very interesting sort of psychological point with this. And so you have little phrases, you know, and little actions and anecdotes all throughout Scientology that encourage people who are in Scientology to take on L. Ron Hubbard's personality. For example, you're asked when faced with a problem of some kind, well, what would Ron do? And you go, what would Ron do? You know? And then you're not thinking about how you should handle this. You're thinking about how L. Ron Hubbard would handle it, who's been dead for 30 years, right? Who did not deal with problems well in the first place, right? Who had a very vindictive nature, right? Now I'm gonna start handling things according to the way he does, right? So this is just one of the little. It's a subtle thing. You don't notice it when it's happening, but it happens over and over again. And the more it happens, the more used to it you become, and the more you're changing your thinking to reflect L. Ron Hubbard's personality rather than your own, you see. And I'm just giving you one little tiny mechanism that's used. There are hundreds of them in Scientology. All right, so getting back to my outline here, I worked in management for 8 years, finally couldn't take it anymore, the daily grind and the pressures and things. It was getting way too much. I stopped being in management, and I then went and became a salesperson for a little while, and I sold to public people in Scientology as a Sea Org member. This is another thing the Sea Org does, is I mentioned that it delivers the highest level confidential information in Scientology. These are called the OT levels. Okay, OT stands for operating Thetan. So you have the Thetan, who's a spirit, and an operating Thetan is one who has learned to be like a super Thetan. Put it that way. So these OT levels, at the top of the bridge, the confidential stuff that no one's supposed to know anything about, but everybody else in the world knows all about it because you watch South Park. I was selling those to people, and I hadn't even done them.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't even know what was on these things, and I was selling. Imagine selling somebody a car and you don't know anything about it except it's the best car you're ever gonna have. Right? And so you can, like, the sky's the limit. You can say anything, right? So I got pretty good at selling people things I didn't even know what I was talking about. Did that for a while, went and made books for a while. Then I went out and went on special projects out in at the city level churches again. I was still a Sea Org member, but I was out doing these special projects where we were opening up new renovated buildings and with a lot of fanfare, and, you know, close the street, open the building. It's so amazing. Wow, isn't this great? Well, all we did was slap some paint on the building and make it look nice, and then open up a new church, even though there wasn't anything really new about it. And the next day after the opening, the place was still empty. I mean, these churches are not. Scientology is not a bustling operation anymore. It hasn't been since the 80s. You know? So it's really been tanking over all these years that I was involved in it, and I was working, trying to do my part to make the world a better place by you know, proselytizing and working within the confines of the Scientology system to try to help people out. And I did help a lot of people out over the years, but it was mainly helping them despite Scientology, not because of it.
Okay.
You know, and so finally in 2012, I got sick and tired of it, and I finally left the Sea Org. I still wanted to do Scientology, but I didn't want to work for Scientology anymore. I wanted to kind of have my own life and get on with things. And I was going to pay for it and do Scientology and get those OT levels and do the whole thing. I was still a loyal Scientologist. I just didn't want to work for them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't really appreciate that I was a former member now, and, you know, former Sea Org member. You get kind of ostracized, and I didn't realize how much hostility there was towards that.
Yeah.
So very shortly thereafter, I got on the internet. This was in early 2013. I had been denied internet access for the most part. I know that's kind of hard to understand in this modern world where the internet is everywhere, but within the world of Scientology, it is controlled in the same way it's controlled in China, actually more so, because Sea Org members don't have social media accounts. We're not on Twitter, not on Facebook, none of that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, by the way.
Yeah.
But you don't get to have access. It's not a self-controlled thing, right? We were censored. And so once I got out of the Sea Org and I was out in the big wide world and on my own again, I had full internet access. And I was getting kind of sick and tired of being treated so poorly by the church. So I finally started doing some critical thinking about it and looking online and seeing stories from former members, some of whom I used to know.
Yeah.
And I suddenly found all this information that I had been being denied over all these years. I learned things about L. Ron Hubbard, like that he flunked out of college, that he never saw a day of combat. Hello? In World War II, this guy was supposedly a World War II war vet and hero.
Right.
He had war stories that were like amazing. And to find out, yeah, no, he lied about all of it. Like, what?
Yep, I know.
He lied about, I mean, he had 3 wives. We only knew about 2 of them in Scientology. And we didn't know that for a year's period of time in 1947 or 48, he was married to 2 women at the same time for a year.
Carson's wife.
Yeah, well, girlfriend, right, that he stole and married, right, Sarah.
Yeah.
So this guy, right, was like the farthest thing from an ethical, spiritual guidepost or moral lighthouse that you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
He's a pathological liar. He's a bigamist. He's a fraud. The Dianetics is based on a total lie because he wrote Dianetics in 1950, and he claimed, like this very clearly, I mean, I'm not making this up. I'm not exaggerating this now. As a former member, I'm not like, you know, people think I have an axe to grind. My axe to grind is that this organization took advantage of me for 25 years. I'm, you know, that's something that's a little infuriating. I still haven't found the words to describe how I felt when I learned, you know, how screwed up this was.
Yeah.
This guy claimed that he had suffered war wounds and was blinded and made lame by the war. And he had self-discovered the principles of Dianetics. And he had spent a year researching at the medical library at Oak Knoll Naval Hospital. He was very specific.
Yeah.
And that through this self-education, he discovered the principles of Dianetics and cured himself of his blindness and his lameness.
Wow.
All of that is a complete lie because he did not suffer any war wounds from the war.
Because he never went
so
to
how could what was there to cure?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
So all of Dianetics is based on a lie.
Yeah.
I then found out, and it took me a while longer to learn about this, but I then found out that Dianetics is basically hypnotism.
Wow.
And at its core, that's what it is. And they only changed some of the words. The actually, the practice is still very much the same.
Yeah.
So, so I learned about that. And then I learned about many other things about Scientology, including I finally downloaded and read for myself online for free the OT levels, all these things I'd been selling people for all that time and thinking I was selling people spiritual freedom and immortality.
Mm-hmm.
And instead I read it and I find out it is the biggest bunch of balderdash nonsense that you've ever had anything to do with. I mean, it's the stuff they show you on South Park is only this much.
Wow.
There's so much more, and all of it is total nonsense.
Yeah.
And people are paying tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, no exaggeration, for this material, so that they're chasing this dream, they're chasing this carrot of personal spiritual freedom and immortality. And I know that your viewership is going to be very much aligned with the Christian ideal and the idea that, you know, salvation is gained through Jesus and through God. Well, in Scientology, it's gained through self.
Wow.
The idea is that you pay your money, you do your time, you do your work. It is work. You need to do this auditing, this counseling. And you need to get hundreds of hours of it, very specific, very laid out, very organized, very structured. You do these steps, and Hubbard promises that at the other end of the bridge is personal spiritual freedom and immortality, right? And these aren't just mantras. There's a whole lot that goes with all this that I'm just sort of using these to sort of, you know, give you a very simple explanation of it. But that's why people do Scientology, is they're trying to better themselves. They're trying to become better people. They're not trying to become jerks or idiots or pursue, you know, Satan's work or something. Has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
What they're honestly in there because they want to make themselves and the world a better place. The people at the top of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard to start with, who was, you know, obviously a megalomaniac, pathological liar, a serial philanderer, wife beater. I mean, the guy was a bad man.
Yeah.
He was a very complicated man.
Mm-hmm.
I could talk about L. Ron Hubbard for a very long time. There's a lot of motivations going on with L. Ron Hubbard. He was not a simple person. It's not a matter of just writing him off as some crazy guy.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things that he put out that made a lot of sense to people, has helped a lot of people in some ways, and makes sense. Mm-hmm. He also plagiarized a lot of stuff from other people that actually is useful and makes some sense.
Yeah.
You combine it all together, you throw Hubbard's science fiction nonsense on top of it all, and some occult practices underneath there that are not labeled as occult practices, and nobody's really aware of that.
Right.
But that's really the philosophical basis of Scientology is occult belief.
Yeah. Can you go into further detail about that? What specific?
Yeah. There's a guy named Aleister Crowley. He called himself the Beast. He was around at the turn of the century through the early 1900s, mid 1900s. Up until the 40s, in fact, he was still alive. Mm-hmm. Hubbard connected up with a man named Jack Parsons. This is right after the war, but before Dianetics and Scientology. It's in between those two places. Yeah. About 47 or 48 or so somewhere around there. L. Ron Hubbard he had a wife and 2 kids up in Seattle that he was estranged from, didn't want to go back to after the war. He just pretty much wrote them off. And he was hanging around down in California, ended up down in the Los Angeles area, Pasadena, California, in fact, where I grew up. Literally 5 minutes away from my home, where I grew up. L. Ron Hubbard was engaging in blood magic rituals with Jack Parsons. Okay, he had a house in Pasadena. Now, Jack Parsons is probably one of the most interesting people of the 20th century. The guy was just so interesting. He was truly a genius. He was a rocket scientist. He was one of the founding members of Jet Propulsion Laboratories at JPL in California. Truly groundbreaking, innovative inventor and rocket scientist. Mm-hmm. he was also an occultist.
Yeah, he was.
So this guy, man,
Yeah.
he had this house. It was sort of this bohemian refuge
Yeah.
in the middle of Pasadena in the 40s, where people would come, gypsies and drifters and con artists like Hubbard, and people would just show up, and Parsons would put them up. And I guess he met Parsons through a writer friend. Hubbard was a writer, and he was a prolific writer. I don't say he was a good writer, but the man did write.
Yeah.
And that was how he made his bread and butter. So he was banging around in LA, meets up with Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons is into free love and the occult and all this stuff. Hubbard gets in there and is like, oh, this looks like, ripe fruit for the plucking. So he, ponies up with Jack, and they start working together on specific blood ritual magic. And I think they actually engaged in this out in the desert, where they were doing rituals that involve sexual depravity and I don't know without even getting into all the details of that.
Yeah.
But they were trying to carry out this this spell or procedure that would create a moon child, as it was called.
Yep.
Which was supposed to be like this thing that was going to become the body for the Antichrist or something.
Yep.
It's all a little confusing because Crowley was not a Satanist in the sense that he worshipped Satan or was against God. That wasn't Crowley's thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people will put that on him, but I didn't get any of that from my readings of his work. Crowley was into drugs and into spirituality and into very weird drug-addled visions. And he wrote books that were just full, that they just read like LSD trips. I mean, they're just ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. That was Crowley's thing. Jack Parsons was a follower of Aleister Crowley, and Crowley's organization or structure was called the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, and there was a lot of symbology and a lot of hierarchy and things to this. You have OTO, and then you have in Scientology OT, operating Satan, right? You have this concept of a structured series of levels you have to get through, far from unique to OTO. It's Masonic. There's all kinds of things you can assign, structured levels to. But it is kind of interesting. Hubbard ended up settling on that system for his own spiritual progress, right? He didn't come up with that for another 10 years, but that became part of Scientology. The symbology, the rosy cross, the Rosicrucian cross, right, from the OTO, which is an 8-point star cross. Looks like a standard Christian cross, but with the 8 points coming off, 4 other points coming off of it.
Yep.
Hubbard adopted a cross for Scientology that has 8 points.
Yep.
Right. So there are similarities here that are beyond coincidental.
Right.
given the direct experience. Hubbard's here, and then he's here. Oh, look, all the symbols are, coming over, and some of the literature or some of the terminology is coming over.
Yeah.
But Scientologists are not aware of any of this background, I'm telling you.
Right. Yeah.
All of this is suppressed. All of this is not this is not the biography of L. Ron Hubbard according to Scientology. They have completely rewritten his life experience, right? This is what's called the hagiography of L. Ron Hubbard, right? Like the hagiography of Jesus. You have his whole life story. Well, you have Hubbard's hagiography, and it's not at all connected with truth or fact, right? Because you can go and look up his records. I mean, you can find them online, his naval records, his war records, it's all there. But Scientologists don't go look at that stuff. That's why I mentioned earlier how the internet is policed with Scientologists, right? They're not supposed to look at any of this stuff because they're not supposed to know about any of it because they can't know about any of this because this would degrade and invalidate L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
And Scientologists go along with it. So
is it just because you talked about like the policing. Can you get into a little bit more? Like, how does that even, how does the church make sure that these members don't have access to the internet? Do they control their, bills and stuff, or how does that even work?
No, it's not quite that controlled. You don't have to get that micromanagement of people's lives if you instill in them a fear that whatever they are doing on a day-to-day basis that is wrong or a sin or is a moral transgression, if they know that the next time or sometime in the future when they go into a Church of Scientology and go in for an auditing session, that they're going to have to confess the stuff they've been up to that is not, that they know they're not supposed to be up to.
And they record all these, right?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. They keep excellent worksheets, notes of everything that's said and goes on in an auditing session. And often, not all the time, but often they are also video recorded. Mm-hmm. So you have this running record of all the things that have happened in your counseling being written and kept in folders with your name on it. You don't get to have access to those folders. They're not your property. But they have all the information, all the secrets, all the information you've given, all the moral transgressions you've committed, all the all your sexual activity, all of anything, all the thinking you've ever, all the critical thoughts you've ever had about other people that you have told your auditor in a session.
Yeah.
It's all written down.
Okay.
So it's all there to be used against you later on if you leave Scientology and start making trouble for them. If you just leave out the back door and don't say another word again, they're going to leave you alone. They're not going to care about you. But if you do what I do or what other critics have done, where we come out and we say, hey, these guys are abusive. They are taking people's money. This is fraud. This is, abuse. Then those secrets become public knowledge.
Right. And that kind of leads me into a couple of questions. The first is, in some of the research that I was doing, I found that they almost have like a CIA type I guess you could call it an organization within Scientology where they do research into people and they track people and monitor people. And so is this all part of that ability to take someone to court or something like that? Or
yes.
Can you speak a little bit into that?
Absolutely. You're referring to what's called the Office of Special Affairs. Yeah. It is a division of Scientology's international management structure. It is its own organization. Within the world of Scientology, information is very, very compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. The whole time that I was in, and I was working up at its fairly, at a fairly high level. I was continental management. Mm-hmm. I saw OSA staff members around, but I didn't work with them. I didn't do what they do. And I didn't really know what they were up to. And I was so busy doing what I was doing, as are all other Sea Org members, that compartmentalizing the information is actually really easy, because Scientologists, Sea Org members especially, learn to become very incurious about what other Sea Org members are doing, because there's projects and things going on all the time that you don't get to know about.
Yeah.
So, and the rumor lines don't really work that well all the time within Scientology, right? It's not like people are gossiping in the Sea Org. It doesn't work that way. So, So OSA gets away with a lot of stuff that Scientologists don't even know they're doing. I mean, all this stalking and harassment of critics of Scientology, your run-of-the-mill Scientologists don't even really know about that.
Yeah.
They don't pay attention. They don't watch it. They don't follow it. They're not supposed to be watching that kind of stuff, because the control factor is you are not supposed to look at or even be aware of anything that's critical of Scientology. And it's not hard to convince somebody not to look at stuff. For example, and maybe this is a bad analogy, but let's find out. You're a Christian, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if somebody came at you and said, well, I read the Necronomicon, and it says that, Satan this, Lucifer that, da-da-da, dee-da-dee, da-da-da, and you Christians got it all backwards, and you guys are, you're just brainwashed.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm guessing your response would probably be along the lines of, have you looked at the Bible? Do you know what Jesus actually said? Do you have a clue what you're talking about? Because the things you're telling me right now are ridiculous and I've never heard of any of it before.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably be along the lines of your response, right?
Well, I've actually heard of the Necronomicon, so
Oh, sure.
yeah.
But have you read it?
No, but I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read bits and pieces as I've read other books who have referenced it before.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. That's a good question.
I mean, I'm making a light analogy here,
Yeah.
right? But I'm just saying that would probably be your response. It would be along those lines, right? It wouldn't be. What it wouldn't be is, what? The Necronomicon says what? Satan says what?
Right.
Oh man, tell me all about this. I got to know everything now. I can't believe this. This is rocking my world, right? That would not be your response, right?
I see. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You have a very firm set of beliefs that you have invested in, that you believe are true, and you're not interested in being challenged about it particularly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to keep you away from anti-Christian literature.
Well, can I just say something on that point, though?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm actually, I see why you gain that viewpoint, but I'm actually the opposite. I would rather the church or the Christian church be aware and literate in every type of literature, even if it's anti-Christian, because I think in order to develop a good view and to have a belief or a faith in something, you have to understand all aspects of it and every side, every attack, every truth, if there is, because I don't think that you can make, and you're not going to understand everything, obviously, but I think it's important that to make an informed decision, you have all of the information that you can at that point in time. And you obviously, as you learn and grow, you reevaluate, you revise or modify your opinions on certain things. But so yeah, I would say, for the church who's listening, research that stuff and know about it and find out about it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to say
No, that's a very good point. You're basically quoting John Stuart Mill, right?
Yeah.
From On Liberty. This is the fundamental basis of our entire concept of freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
Yeah.
It hinges on these, this concept that you just communicated, and which was elucidated years ago by John Stuart Mill. Scientology doesn't go for that, right? Freedom of speech and freedom of expression are only mouth, that's just smoke and mirrors for Scientology.
Yeah.
So let me just take this one step further. Well, let's put it this way. Your church doesn't do this, which is why it's not a destructive cult. My church did. Mm-hmm. What they said was they took it one step further. Like everything I just said as this comparison with the Christian thing, right? But then let's say that your local pastor or your local spiritual advisor or church leader says to you, it's not okay that you read that stuff. It's tainting your soul. It's poisoning your mind. It's turning you away from Jesus. Mm-hmm. Just to look at it, just to read it. In fact, I'm wondering right now, what is it that would even make you feel compelled to read that or look at it in the first place? Isn't Jesus enough of an answer for you?
Yeah.
Now that's insidious, right?
Yeah.
That is crafty. That is not overtly saying to you, you are not going to read that.
Right. Yeah.
That's not how it's said, right? Because if you do that, defenses come up. I get curious. What do you mean I can't read that? Now all I want to do is read it, right? Mm-hmm. But if I say to you, Jesus doesn't want you reading that. In fact, why would you even feel compelled to even look at anything except what Jesus says? Isn't that good enough for you? Like what? That's the truth, and that's what's going to take you to the light.
Yeah.
Not this. That's not going to take you anywhere. All that's going to do is take you to Satan.
Right.
You can't have any of that in your life. That's just negative influence on you.
Yeah.
Now I have accomplished brainwashing. Now I have accomplished thought control, haven't I?
You sure have, yeah.
Now you're not going to look at it.
So,
and I didn't have to order you to do a thing.
Right.
I just questioned you. I just said, dude, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
Why are you looking at that? That is a sin to be
Yeah.
looking at that.
Well, I get it. So that kind
That's
of
what Scientology does.
yeah, that leads into my other question about you've been on or advisor to Leah Remini's show on A&E.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk about that? And you're obviously Leah Remini is a big voice for the anti-Scientology because of the the stature that she has and the platform she has. But can you talk a little bit about the control of the church and how you and Leah and other people are battling against that and trying to get the truth to Scientologists and
Yeah, absolutely.
how we can help?
Yeah. No, this is really good. I thank you for that. Okay, so Leah has done 3 seasons of a TV show called Scientology and the Aftermath. It's appeared on A&E. You can the episodes are online. You can find them.
Mm-hmm.
If you got any cable or any access to A&E, you can look them up and find.
They're actually on Hulu as well.
Yes, there you go. Okay, so I was in the first season. I got to be on one of the shows, and it was fun. And I got to advise on the show, which was fun too, because there's the one thing I get to say I'm an expert in is Scientology.
Yeah.
I don't know about anything else, but about this, I definitely know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Leah's show has exposed a tremendous number of abuses through personal testimonials and background information and education about Scientology and how it's structured and how it works. Her show has brought to millions and millions of people around the world the truth about how Scientology is a destructive cult and it's very abusive.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why it's destructive and abusive is because it separates families and friends and even busts up businesses by controlling who it is that its membership can talk to or be connected with. This is known in other circles and other groups as shunning. In Scientology, it's called disconnection. It's an enforced practice. You do not have a choice as a Scientologist. If the church comes down and says that they are labeling Joe as a suppressive person or an SP. Scientology loves its acronyms and it loves its labels, but this is a fairly simple one, suppressive person. It's an antisocial description. If I say that you're an SP, that means that you are like a Hitler, like a criminal,
yeah.
like a psychotic, a serial killer. These are suppressive people. These are people who have nobody else's interests but their own in mind, who only act for their own interests, who are trying to hold down other people around them. Mm-hmm. That's why they're called suppressive people. They suppress other people. The church uses this as an ideological weapon to suppress critics of Scientology, including apostates or former members such as myself. If you started speaking out against Scientology, in fact, just having me on your show makes you somewhat suppressive, but not a full-blown SP. I'm the SP. The label that's used for you is a PTS, or a potential trouble source. You're connected to a suppressive person somehow, see? So now you have become potentially trouble for the church.
Yeah.
You're a source of trouble for Scientology. Not for yourself,
right.
For the church, see?
Yeah.
Now, this is communicated to the membership in a very different way. In the same way that, like I just gave you the example of how they communicate to stay off the internet.
Right.
Right? It's a crafty, clever way. It's not an open, blunt way. It's a very crafty way.
Right.
This is the SP and the PTS stuff is explained to Scientologists in such a way that it's made to seem like it's in their best interest to not be connected with the suppressive person.
Okay.
He's a bad person. He destroys relationships. He's down on Scientology. He kills babies. He does whatever, that claims they're going to make. They're going to tell Scientologists that this guy has gone to the dark side.
Yeah.
That he's bad, evil, must be destroyed. So the Scientologist then understands that they can no longer be connected with that person anymore. And if they choose to stay connected to that one person, it's a choice. And they're choosing that person over the church, which means they will be declared suppressive and they will be shunned or disconnected. And when you're disconnected, it is absolute. There are no Christmas cards. There are no birthdays. There are no holidays. There are no connections. There are no phone calls. There's no emails. There's no tweets. There is nothing. You are completely cut off from everybody who is officially a Scientologist for the rest of your life. That's how it is. And if they're your family, if they were your best friend, if they were your business partner, it doesn't matter. If the church says that they are suppressive, your only job is to disconnect from that person forever. And this is how Scientology destroys families and friendships and businesses. And I've seen them do it hundreds and hundreds of times. So, and I have now been declared a suppressive person as of 2013, because after I went down that internet rabbit hole and learned the truth about Scientology, I could no longer in good conscience be a Scientologist, but I was still connected with Scientologists. All my friends were Scientologists. So my parents used to be. They got out before I did. So I'm still connected with my parents, thank God. But the rest, my ex-wife, who is still a Scientologist, friends I had for 20 years, completely gone now.
Wow.
So that practice of disconnection is just one systemic abuse that Scientology perpetrates on its followers, because it's Scientology who says whether you can or can't be connected. And the price of non-compliance is you getting disconnected in this. And after you've been in Scientology for a while, you find that your friends are all Scientologists all of a sudden, like those are the only people you're talking to. And suddenly you're working for a Scientologist. You're marrying a Scientologist. Like all these things happen that increase the control factors on you, because now you're the people who are most intimate with, most connected to, are card-carrying Scientologists. So if you start feeling doubts, reservations, concerns, or problems with the church, well, you're going to have to get over that, because if you separate from the church and go, well, this isn't for me anymore, these people are probably going to have a very serious problem with you all of a sudden. That's how it happens. Like suddenly people just turn on you overnight. It is kind of creepy how fast it can happen. My Facebook friendship, it crashed overnight when I got declared a suppressive person, right? It was immediate and instant.
Wow.
And you don't have any say in the matter. If they say you're suppressive, that's it. There's a series of steps you can do, and it'll only take you a couple of years, thousands and thousands of dollars, and making up, amends to the church, because you have to jump through all the hoops that they say you have to jump through in order to go from a suppressive person to being back into good standing with the church. And it's not just showing up and being contrite and saying, I'm sorry. Oh no, it is way more extensive than that. They call that the A to E steps, A, B, C, D, E, right? You have to, there's step A, B, C, all the way through E you have to get through. And those steps are extensive. So, and you have to want to do it, right? Most of the time when you get out and you're declared a suppressive, you're like, yeah, I don't want to have anything to do with you people anymore, right? But it really sucks that you have to lose all your friends and family in the process. How's that fair? How's that work, right? That's what cults do. That's the cult part.
Gosh. Dang, man. We haven't even scratched the surface, and our time is up. Gosh, you were...
I know, I told you.
Gosh, I don't want to take too much more of your time today, but...
No, this is good, though. We've covered a lot of good stuff.
For those of you who are watching and you have more questions, I'm going to put Chris's info in the description of the video and stuff like that, and all his platforms that you can get in touch with him and follow him. And because he does some great stuff, guys. And just from the few videos that I've watched, it's been really enlightening for me. Also on critical thinking, which we didn't even touch on.
No, we didn't even get into that. Yeah.
And I would love, if you want, to come back and we can discuss some stuff of that, and talk about what you're doing today to free your mind, or whatever you want to call it, if you will. And so
no, it's called recovery, and it's a process, and I've been working on it really hard for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk about that.
Awesome. Well, we'll end for today, and we'll talk about getting you back on and chatting about that stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel, and we're gonna have Chris back on in the future. So keep a lookout for that. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.